Clark Luthor, Lois Queen, Jonathan Kent, and Jack pulled up to the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory in 3 18-wheelers. Clark and Lois were in the first truck. They pulled up to security, and Lois showed the guard her ID. She said someone from Swan Communications should have called ahead. The security guard took her ID and went into his security booth. Lois looked over at Clark and said, "I was worried there for a minute, but you did all right driving one of these." Clark asked, did she have faith that anyone other than herself could get anything done? Lois said, "No, I know for a fact I am the only capable person on this earth." Clark smiled and said, "I'm surprised you could fit your ego into the cab of the truck." Lois responded, "Who was the person who convinced everyone in Metropolis to give up every single piece of kryptonite? And who was the person who got you into the only place that could destroy it?" Clark answered, "First of all, it's not the only place that can destroy kryptonite. There was also one in San Diego. Second, we're not in yet." The security guard handed Lois her ID and told him to drive through. Clark drove forward as Lois said, "You were saying?" Clark just smiled. The 3 trucks had pulled into the loading bay of the laboratory, and they were greeted by one of the scientists. He wasn't sure if their tokamaks would be enough to handle all of the kryptonite they brought. Clark said, "Right now, you are our best choice. We have to try." The scientist nodded and pointed to the huge carts lined up in the loading bay. He said, "They are made of lead, just like you asked." Lois asked, "How are we going to get everything unloaded today?" Clark said, "Leave that to me." He pulled out the lead-lined hazmat suit and put it on, then unloaded all 3 trucks in about 3 minutes. The carts were motorized, so as soon as they were full, they automatically rolled toward the lab. Inside the lab, the scientists took them through the process of powering up the tokamak. Clark wondered if they should put the kryptonite in batches or one big batch. Before the scientists could speak, the lab's alarms went off. Jack asked if there was a problem with the tokamak. The scientists said that was their security alarms. Jonathan and Clark looked at each other and said, "Malone." Jack said, "I knew I should have gotten some of my Marine friends to ride along. Malone definitely brought his security team." He and Jonathan pulled out a gun. The scientists said they have high-level security. Malone couldn't get past them. The lights in the lab started to flash red. Lois looked at the scientist. He said that meant the lab had been breached. Jack said to Clark, "Jonathan and I will handle this. You get the tokamak loaded, you're gonna have to do one big batch." Lois asked him if he had an extra gun. Jack said he couldn't afford to hand over a weapon to a reporter. Lois asked, "You said you're ex-military, right? So I guess you've heard of General Sam Lane? He's my father." Jack tossed Lois a gun. "Okay, let's see what the military brat can do."